Welcome to This is Yoga Therapy. I'm your host, Michelle Lawrence. Join me as we venture beyond the mat into the fascinating intersections of yoga and health. Each episode brings you candid conversations with the visionary leaders and practitioners who are truly shaping this field, sharing their stories, insights, and the profound impact of yoga therapy in action. In today's episode, I have the honor of speaking with Susanna Barkataki. Susanna is a #1 best-selling author, a viral TEDx speaker, and a certified yoga therapist who is currently pursuing her PhD in yoga philosophy. She's the founder of Ignite Institute for Yogic Leadership and Social Change and the author of the essential book, Embrace Yoga's Roots. She bridges ancient wisdom with crucial spiritual leadership for our time. It's such an honor to have you here. I feel really fortunate to be in conversation with you.
I'm really excited for our conversation. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, I'd love to just have you start by sharing a little bit more about yourself. You might be one of the more famous folks we've had on the podcast in a while. So I imagine some of our listeners do know who you are, but let's hear a little bit more about your background. So you have deep training. You've been ordained by Thich Nhat Hanh. You've studied with masters in India. What's the initial moment or realization that compelled you to dedicate your work to the ethical and social dimensions of yoga? Like, what was that?
First, I'll just say for folks listening, I love how when folks read my bio and, I'm like I'm putting it in quotes.
Yeah.
I'm like a super dorky, kind of shy,
Mhm.
fun, funny person. So I just also want to normalize, like, I'm just
Yeah.
a regular person. And I was a teacher, actually, K-12 high school English and history teacher for a lot of my career.
Uh-huh.
There's been so many doorways to yoga
Mm.
in that depth. I feel like, there's a few that came from my early life being mixed. My father is from India, from Assam in the Northeast, and my family is Assamese and Bengali. So I grew up, with my aunties and uncles sharing yogic practices with me and sort of the backdrop of life, really. We're all immigrants, the ones that I grew up with here in the LA area. And then my mom is British. And so I have that kind of
Mhm.
cross-cultural, East-West experience. And that certainly was a doorway that I don't think I was aware of until much later, even though it was happening in the background of my life. And then becoming a teacher actually was a high school teacher at
Sure.
21, right after I graduated from UC Berkeley with a degree in philosophy. Like, the most not practical job you could or
Right.
degree, yeah, you could possibly get. But I moved back to LA and I got hired by the high school I went to teach philosophy and
Wow.
English and history. Yes. And so I walk in, and I realize pretty quickly I was so over my head. There was so much that I didn't know about how to be a good teacher. And it was a really challenging time. Like, if anyone has gone through those moments where the learning curve, I'm holding my hand like, a steep mountain, it was so steep.
Mm.
And so I really wanted to do a good job as a teacher, but I could see that gap between where I was and what I wanted to do. And it was paralyzing. And so I'd go to school and like somehow get through the day, come home, practice, plan lessons, wake up, have to throw myself again into meditation, mantra, mudra, like practices that just really were kind of helping me get through that day of teaching a couple hundred students and trying my best.
Yeah.
So it was through necessity, I think, that I turned back towards practices that could help me like ground, be calm, work with, when I look at it now, it's like anxiety,
Mm.
overwhelm, like very common, but somehow it felt so isolating.
Yeah.
So that was definitely a big doorway. And then taking a sabbatical and living in India for a while and practicing with my main teacher, Shankarji, who I learned with for a few years. And then he was the one who said, okay, you've learned enough, go back to the West where you're from and share particularly yoga philosophy. It's, yoga ethics is not something the West really has embraced at all. So take that and teach, and it took me a little while to actually begin teaching, but that was kind of the push.
That's great to know that. And I wasn't aware. And it is so interesting, all the different doorways that we go through, and how those moments of, for you teaching, for me, I had a corporate background, like
Mm.
they all contribute to this role that we're in now, right? Even though it might look different from where we started. Yours might feel a little more connected than mine, but they're so valuable and shape who we are. And I'm going to talk about your book here next. I'm not sure when it came out. Did it come
Which
out?
one? The Embrace
Embrace
Yoga?
Yoga's Roots.
Yeah, 2020,
It
November.
did. Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was, at that moment, and it's been really instrumental in shifting the conversation within the yoga community. And maybe some folks are new to
Mhm.
this topic, right? Some folks listening. So maybe just explain why honoring the full breadth of yoga, its philosophy, worldview, South Asian origins, so essential for the integrity of therapeutic practice specifically today. If you could kind of give that perspective to it as well.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there was in 2019, actually, so a little bit before my book came out, there was a wonderful kind of scientific finding by, it was Scientific American that published the benefits of what they called, now I think it was called cardiac coherence breathing, right? And some of you may be familiar with when this occurred. And cardiac coherence breathing, it's alternate nostril breathing. And they did not cite the sources or point to any of the, it's thousands of years. It was written about in various Upanishads, but extensively in the Taittiriya Upanishad. They just said, okay, there's this practice. It has impacts on heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, all hypertension, all of these wonderful benefits, but without any connection to the lineage, right? Or the even just like good scholarship citing sources. And so there was a huge uproar about that across a lot of different domains. I think yoga therapy, yoga, even eventually the Indian government and Ayush got involved saying, this is essentially it's plagiarism, right? You're taking a practice and not pointing to where it comes from, which is important because one, it's not the only practice, right? There's a lot, as we
Right.
know, many different pranayama practices. And without proper instruction, guidance, right, we could actually be negatively impacting our
Sure.
clients or people that we work with. And so to me, that's one really concrete example of why it's so important that we understand kind of the breadth of what we're dealing with. None of us made up yoga, right? Or yoga therapy. It's not mine, it's not yours, it's not, we're transmitters and we're
100%.
teachers of it, right? And maybe practitioners, maybe we get to offer it as part of our personal lives or live it as part of our personal lives or teach it in our professions, but we didn't invent it. And there's something I think very important and almost reassuring about that, that there is a kind of evidence-based history of this practice that we can look to. And if we're not connecting to the roots or the history in that way, then we miss out on a lot of opportunity for depth, breadth, clarity. And our students or our clients then also miss out, right? If we aren't able to point to resources or literature, places where they can learn more.
Mhm.
It's, I wouldn't want someone who knew all about acupuncture to have been working on me when I broke my femur, for example, right? It's like you want someone trained in the breadth of whatever their discipline is. And so, as yoga teachers or yoga therapists, it's so important that we understand not just the kind of more recent, say it's really only like 50 years or more, around or less actually, the protocols that we've developed that are in connection with modern and Western healthcare, but
Right.
also looking at the protocols that have existed for a long time.
Yeah, yeah. So important, right? And I love how you really pointed to it gives depth, breadth, and clarity, right? So not only is it just good scholarship, right? But it just makes the whole thing way more meaningful and potentially so much more powerful, right? Because from that point on, other practices could be brought in, things could be individualized, all of that as well. So let's talk about your institute. Okay, so you're the founder of the Ignite Institute for Yogic Leadership and Social Change. And I know you're doing a ton of great work there, and you're welcome to speak about the different aspects of what the Institute is offering. And I'm also curious, like, based on that work, what does ethical leadership look like in like modern wellness spaces, right? Because yoga and wellness are different. And so, side by side and mixed, of course, all over the place. And what specific role can a certified yoga therapist play in being an agent for positive social change within their community? I think there is a role for that, obviously. And if we're using the word yoga and therapist next to each other, that means something different than health coach or wellness facilitator.
Mm. Yes, there's a lot of skill and depth that goes into being a yoga therapist and specific practices that I think we can offer that are complementary, right, to a
Yeah.
therapist or to a healthcare practitioner. So, Ignite Institute came about because essentially I moved back from India and was living in the LA area teaching high school. And a lot of my friends noticed that I was different. Something had changed in me. And so they
Mm.
asked, like, can you share what is different about you? And when I was younger, as I mentioned, I was kind of shy, kind of insecure. That flipped over to sometimes controlling and, just not always the most easygoing or pleasant to be around. And they were like, no, you're different. Like there's something really changing about you. So that was an interesting moment where a lot of my friends at that time worked in different healing professions. So they were therapists or they were working in treatment centers or with survivors of sexual assault or abuse and recovery, addiction recovery. And so they were specifically asking because they knew that the things that had changed in me would be helpful both for them and for their clients, right? The
Very
people that
cool.
they served.
Yeah.
And so the beginning of Ignite came from that sort of
Mm.
Shankarji saying, go and teach. And then people in my world saying, okay, we actually want to learn what you have to offer. And so the very first kind of training and workshops that I put together were around Ayurvedic practices, actually, because I had also done a certification and become an Ayurvedic practitioner. And so guiding people through that kind of journey of understanding their prakriti, their basic nature and imbalance, and how to move more into harmony. And then it also, people wanted to have like go through a deeper training and do yoga teacher training. So I started offering yoga teacher training out of my backyard. And then a few years later, realized, oh, this is actually an institute, right? This isn't just
Mm-hmm.
me running something out of the back of my
Mm.
house. This is many different faculty, a community, a body, a student body that is often folks who are not seen in yoga, as the leaders in wellness or yoga therapy. They're disabled folks, bigger bodied folks, neurodivergent folks, people of color, right? It's not that we aren't, and for folks listening, right? It's not that anyone shouldn't be seen. It's just that when you look around at the world, there are folks who are left out. So the Institute kind of filled in that gap of providing access to education that was sensitive, I think, to different cultural needs and different community needs. So before we were even using the words trauma informed, we were doing a lot of work. We didn't call it that back then, but it was trauma informed in the sense that it was addressing, diversity of cultural
Yep.
experience and all of those things. And through the years, those trainings have moved online, also in person, 200-hour, 300-hour. And we've trained about 2,500 teachers again, most or many of those on partial or full scholarships, because it's a
Yeah.
big part of the mission of the Institute is to change the face of, yoga and wellness. And when we don't see ourselves doing these things, it's hard to visualize or imagine. And so I think for yoga therapists today, part of it is understanding, like we talked about earlier, like the roots of yoga, but not just the roots without connecting to who's in front of you. A big part of how we can be those agents of, kind of general change and uplift is looking at the communities around us and then plugging in and thinking about how we can work with and serve the communities that exist where we are, right? So if you're in, like when I moved to Florida and I was in a smaller, not that small, but a smaller town than LA, it was a different community need that was called
Mhm.
forth from me than when I moved back. Now I'm back in the Los Angeles area. There are different organizations that I can work with or partner with. And then each of us is also sort of constituted in a way through our own life experience to perhaps serve a particular population. We might be working with different communities. And so just really, I think, leaning into that, making the connection as yoga therapists, not just around like individual health, but community health, looking at how we can contribute to that, which, you might think, who am I? I'm just this, little one yoga therapist. We actually can really impact our communities, especially when we plug in and connect with other organizations as well.
Yeah. And you're so speaking my language, as someone who trains up other yoga therapists, this is what we look at all the time, right? And how can we work alongside others that are serving the community, right? We have a unique scope of practice and a unique offering that we can bring, and it can feel isolating to work as a solopreneur. However, there's probably another organization in your community that's already working with youth or already working with folks who have cancer, already working with folks going through addiction. How can we work alongside them to bring the yoga therapy piece to the whole care model? Yeah. Yeah. So important. So let's talk about your second book,
Mm.
Ignite Your Yoga, came out in April, I think, of this year.
Yes.
And I would like to kind of just hear a little bit about the book's core message and how it builds upon the foundation work that you did in Embrace Yoga's roots.
Yes. So Embrace Yoga's Roots kind of focuses on history where we've kind of like gone wrong with yoga in the
Right?
West, right? Like what
Mm-hmm.
separations are, our role in it, and how we can reconnect. So it's sort of that foundation. And then I wanted to take the last sort of section of Embrace Yoga's Roots and draw it out more because I really didn't get to, it's sort of like, here's the breakdown, right? Where are we going from here? And so Ignite Your Yoga, 5 years later, it was published from the first book. I also had the chance to live and see and witness other people living the where do we go with yoga now, right?
Sure.
How can we practice it in a way that kind of fills up our whole lives with what it means to be a yoga practitioner? And so this book is filled with stories. It's stories from my
Mm.
own life, stories from colleagues and people around us who are practicing in a way that is changing their own life and the world around them. And it's more like, I would say it's like the stories of yoga ethics, come to life. And then I've been lucky to have some really unique experiences, like getting to train and live with Thich Nhat Hanh for,
Yeah.
on and off for a decade, with the Dalai Lama, with, Patrice Cullors, who's one of the co-founders of Black Lives Matter. So I wanted to be able to share some of the insights and ahas that come from, just living the particular experience in life that I've led, which has been so steeped in yogic ethics, particularly. And then it's also very practical. I would say it's like for people who are looking for, how do I find a teacher? How can I be sure if there's all this abuse, right? Ethical, kind of gray areas in so many yoga lineages and even in yoga communities and studios what are some safeguards for me as a practitioner or for me as a teacher so I can responsibly, like, as a teacher be responsible and as a practitioner not end up in a terrible situation, right? The
Mm,
practical kind of guidance as well.
right.
Yeah.
So needed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh. I'd love to bring it back to yoga therapy a little bit. And so you are a yoga therapist and an Ayurvedic practitioner, as you mentioned. And so we look at the whole person, right? Whole person health. And also this concept of Dharma, which you often discuss. So I'm wondering how you would pull that in as a yoga therapist, as an Ayurvedic practitioner, the concept of Dharma when it comes to working with the individual and their unique treatment plan, particularly if they've got chronic stress or chronic illness. Like, where does that layer into the work of a yoga therapist?
Hmm. Yeah, and I'll just kind of cite where I'm getting this perspective from, which is Shankarji and then also Sri Aurobindo's work of integral yoga psychology. And my particular teacher, Debashish Banerjee, I want to mention their names just because what I appreciate about their work is it when we're talking about Dharma, we're actually talking about each of our individual unique unfoldment of the one, right? So
Hmm.
it's a really beautiful, like incredibly beautiful thing as a yoga therapist to be able to steward a person in their life journey of unfoldment, right? Without the overlay or putting onto them what our dharma is or
Right.
our journey is. And so it's so precious. And I think it takes real, like Viveka, like real discernment, real clear seeing as a practitioner to steward someone's unfolding. And so I think of it like that, right? Like a
Yeah.
process of discernment, listening deeply, allowing the truth of what that person is unfolding into to emerge. And so, of course, there might be certain treatment protocols, or like if there's chronic illness or chronic stress, things that we can offer, but always tying back to the why with them.
Mhm.
You know, in every session, I think that's part of what we can offer as yoga therapists is the bigger meaning and the bigger purpose. Like, of course, we want to be well or feel more well and as healthy as is in alignment for us, but for what end, right? And it's that purpose, that unfoldment that we can help guide individuals towards theirs. And it may be completely different than ours. You know, we may be, like, I think of myself, I'm a parent, I know as you are, but in my personal unfoldment career and my vocation has taken a it's a big part of my personal dharma. And so if a therapist was coaching me and missed that and was just focusing on my relationships and personal life and family life, that would be unfortunate, right? It would be
Yeah.
a missed opportunity. But perhaps, right, taking that discernment to see, well, in the full picture of, I'm just using myself as an example, Susanna, there is some opportunity for, you know, a shift towards family that may relieve some stress from the vocation, right? Like there's ways of allowing both the client, but also, you know, inquiring with them. And I think the biggest thing that my teachers have always emphasized is critical thinking on the emphasizing critical thinking on the part of the client, right? Like that we do not know better than them. We may have insights that we can help guide them to, but that our job is really to support their unfoldment. And I'm curious
Mm.
how that resonates for.
It totally resonates for me and in the work that I witness and can help guide. I love the word stewardship, right? And the more you can know about the person in front of you, whether you're using the koshas and gathering up all the different dimensions of their life, the more that you can know and be in discernment with, the more that you can listen to what they're saying. That's how these this stewardship, this treatment planning, if you will, can meet them where they are. And we're not here to fix, we're here to empower, right? And to guide them on that path. So I loved that example that you gave about really your life. And if the therapist missed how important one aspect was, your work, then that would be a big miss, right? Just as it might be if someone tells you that they really love doing this thing over here, whatever that is, they love that. And if the therapist didn't notice that or, encourage them to perhaps do more of it or look to make that part of the healing process, then that would be a miss too.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your app. You have many things, right? So you founded the Yoke Yoga Wellness app. So what sparked that, right? And how do you ensure that the offerings provided there remain true to the wisdom and the ethical integrity that you champion so much?
Yeah, so Yoke Yoga app, and y'all can check it out. It's free. It's a space to offer and practice yoga in kind of like a social setting. So I would say it's like an online community of Sangha, of yoga practitioners, and inclusive, diverse, right? And initially, we invited in specific practitioners. So we asked, for their qualifications, their background, their training, pretty much everyone on there I knew personally, right? I hadn't trained everyone. I think it's really important. There's a diversity of people with different lineages, different training schools. But I knew them. And now we've opened it up. So anyone can post, but in order to you enter your certifications. So whatever designations you have, whether that's an RYT 200 or certified yoga therapist or lineage-based teacher. So that's one aspect. There's just been this beautiful process, I think, in community of people focusing on particular issues, whether it's sleep or stress or anxiety, and offering practices from their background and their expertise. And so if right now we've only had one or two issues where like someone has come on and shared something that's out of alignment, right, with the values, we make sure the values are front and center when you sign up. And then we just support people in finding other other communities or spaces to be. But it's been a really, really wonderful experience to kind of like, if we're going to be on social media, which many of us are these days, to offer an opportunity to do that in a mindful way and in a way where we can have kind of micro practices and practices towards our wellness. And then a number of organizations and companies invite us in to do corporate wellness. And so we'll do like from the teachers who are on the app, right? And there is a verification pathway. So you can become a verified teacher on the pathway on the app. Some of those teachers go into different organizations and offer corporate wellness, both live and online. And then the companies have Yoke Yoga as a bridge in between those wellness experiences. And so one of our most recent clients is Netflix in New York. And that's been a really wonderful opportunity because they're doing such incredible creative work, but to be able to give, support for stress and anxiety and overwhelm and generally support well-being there.
That's so cool. Yeah, amazing.
Mm.
Anything else you'd like to share with our listeners about your work? Anything coming up that's
Let's see. I mean, I first of all just feel so grateful for you and for the folks that are listening because we're like the ones swimming upstream in the culture these days of going deeper with what yoga is, what it can be, looking at yoga as a therapeutic, as a healing tool, as a supportive tool for well-being. And it's not lost on me, that this is it's not always popular. It's often misunderstood. And so just being in a place in a community where we can kind of say, oh, yeah, I get you, even if we have different experiences and different backgrounds. And um, right now, I think the main thing that's going on for me, honestly, is just doing some of my own kind of healing work and supporting my own nervous system and soma, mind, body, spirit, just I do so much, and so folks might relate to this, right? I do so many things, and sometimes there are times in our lives that call for more of that inner turn and inner cultivation, and so I'm in one of those moments, and so if there are things that have supported you in that self-tending, or I just would invite folks to reach out and connect and share because we are, I know we're sort of a big, small community, and that's very, very precious. And I'm really grateful for all of the work that we each do.
Thank you for that. Yeah. So I'd love to just kind of close by having you share, and maybe it's different right now at this time in your life, but really the importance of having a personal practice, a regular practice. If we're going to go out and teach this stuff, if we're going to go out and be yoga therapists, right? We have to do it ourselves first. And not only is that responsible, but also it helps us,
Mm.
right? It helps us navigate life in this world and what comes our way in the work that we do. So I'd love to know what your personal practices are. What is your daily routine? What's your sadhana like?
Yes, I love this question, and I so agree with you. It's like we have to be practicing. And that doesn't necessarily for everyone mean that it's the same, right? In that same way we customize treatment plans for our clients or others, we can customize for ourselves. And so I've gone through different phases, particularly when my kiddo was young, a lot of it honestly felt like yoga in daily life, while nursing, doing meditation, right? And practice there because it was just so engaged and so busy and there wasn't a lot of time. And now, as my kiddo is a little bit older, moving into middle school, there is time again for me to do asana practice in the morning. Often I'll do maybe 20 to 30 minutes of asana, some chanting, pranayama, um, into a meditation. And I do vary whether I start or end with dhyana, with meditation, but um, my practice usually is asana, dhyana, meditation, and then sometimes a form of pratyahara practice like candle gazing. And then there's just so many lifestyle kind of supports that I'm bringing in through the day. I'll do after lunch, like a nervous system reset, maybe some humming or pranayama again, just to build it in through the day. And I haven't been as much, but I would like to bring back in doing some practice like that right before bed, legs up the wall. Sometimes I'm just tired or distracted and want to get into bed and read my book, but having a little bit of support at those key touch points, like different rhythms through the day. And then the other piece I'd like to share, which is one that I really learned from Thich Nhat Hanh more than anything, is mindful eating. So taking some slow, deep breaths before eating. And even if I'm with a friend, maybe taking the first, just depends on the friend and how open they are, but 5 to 10 breaths, 5 to 10 minutes, if you can, in silence to just be with the food and, connect to where the food comes from, gratitude for all of the cooks and the farmers that brought it to us. That practice, because we're all eating, right, multiple times a day, it's a beautiful invitation into, slowing down and nourishing our digestion and also our whole soma.
Lovely.
Mm.
Well, thank you so much, Susanna. It's really been so nice to have this conversation with you, and I look forward to keeping an eye on what you're doing and looking to you as such an important leader for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle.
Thanks again for listening. If you're interested to learn more about who we are and what we do, check us out at innerpeaceyogatherapy.com.